Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Publica. This will be the third and the last part of the episode about Hannah Arendt and her essay, What is Authority? In the previous episode, I explained the genealogy that Hannah Arendt does in order to explain why authority has been diminishing in the last 200 years. In that sense, he explores from the ancient Greece with the idea of Plato, how the philosopher finds the truth once he leaves the cave. Remember the parable of the cave written in Plato in the book 7 of the Republic, and then this person comes back and transforms this truth in a set of rules to be implemented among the society. In other words, the philosopher discovers how it works the world around him or her in order later on to establish a set of rules following those ideas in order to the functioning of the society. For that reason, he points how a philosophic irrelevance of the realm of politics was something which was endangering the life in the ancient Greece. In that sense, he changed the center of his thought to make it applicable to politics. Then we had the Roman Empire, how they loved the tradition and took the influence from a kind of sphere of the Roman tradition. Also how from the gods were above in the Olympus for the Greeks, and in the Roman religion the past and the patria were those kind of strongholds to be followed, and in that regard create the new society. So in this episode I wanted to touch about how Hannah Arendt, after doing a kind of historical trip through ancient Greece, the ancient Rome, and the Christianity time in Europe, she points how there was a political science that perhaps it must be considered as the pioneer of the modern politics, which is Machiavelli. According to Hannah Arendt, there are people who gave this kind of role to Thomas Hobbes, who was writing 100 years later. But for Hannah Arendt, Machiavelli contains of quote methods by which one may indeed gain power but not glory, end quote. It kind of relates the importance of the political sphere nowadays. She was written 70 years ago, but still her ideas had great resonance with our contemporary society, because for Machiavelli it was not important to be evil. I mean, there are many readings of Machiavelli who kind of disregard the main idea of the thinker from Florence, which basically was that politics was very important and you could do anything to reach the ends that you had established in the first place. But that does not mean that you need to do bad things to reach that end. Only that you need to follow the path that it is more appropriate for your goals. In that sense, Machiavelli rejects Greek idea of good for and the Christianity absolute godness in politics. They could be applied in the private sphere, but not on the private in the public realm, according to Machiavelli. In other words, you could be really good person with your family, among your friends, but later on in the political realm, you had to be I think he mentions that brave like a lion or something like that, and smart as a fox. Probably I am saying bad the kind of adjectives, but it was something related with this idea that you needed to be witty but also powerful, brave in order to attain your means. In that sense, Machiavelli also points how every contact between religion and politics must inevitably corrupt both trends. Henceforth, religion and politics for Machiavelli should have to be separated, and the whole of Roman history and mentality depended upon the experience of the idea of the foundation, which for Machiavelli could be useful to kind of the foundation of an eternal body. So, in other words, Machiavelli wanted to remind the echoes of the Roman Empire to create the Italian Republic that will be established 300 years after Machiavelli. Even a bit more, I think it's 350 years. And we may wonder how this thought influenced Mussolini in the creation of the fascist Italy as a kind of idea of a nation following the trends of a kind of leader which was considered as the, let's say, the father of the patria. But what we know is that Antonio Gramsci, that wrote The Modern Prince, had many reminiscences of the political thinking of Machiavelli. For Gramsci, the Modern Prince was the Communist Party in Italy, which could be used in order to carry forward with this idea of the foundation to unify the people. And it is precisely this idea of the foundation which is fundamental for Hannah Arendt, because she points how the crisis of the present world is primarily political. According to her, the decline of the West consists primarily in the decline of the Roman trinity of religion, tradition, and authority. The importance of the past is remarked by Marx in his book The 18 Brumaire of Napoleon of Louis Bonaparte, how the people who create the French Revolution, the Jacobins, the Girondins, and all the other kind of revolutionaries, even though they wanted to create a new system and destroying the old order, they appear on the stage of history in Roman costumes, according to Karl Marx. In other words, even those pioneers movement had to have some influence from the past. And this is the power of history, which Marx, precisely in that book, mentions how history happened twice. The first time as tragedy and the second one as farce. Like the first time that you do something completely new, there is a chance of failure, but the problem is that when in the future people want to imitate the kind of patterns followed by the past people, they usually end in something which is kind of even comic, dramatic, or destined to fail. This does not mean that we cannot draw lessons from history. On the contrary, it is fundamental to do so. And in that sense, Hannah Arendt explains how, quote, the revolution of the modern age appear like gigantic attempts to repair the past foundations, end quote. I don't know if this is completely true, what Hannah Arendt is mentioning, neither her idea that the decline of the West is due to the decline of religion, tradition, and authority. She is also very unsympathetic with the modern revolutions like the Russian and the French, because according to her, they have kind of produced millions of death, and even though this is truth, it is not kind of safe to assume that in the past the ancient regime did not produce that kind of killings due to starvation, to massacres, and so on. Sorry, there were not many people killed during the French Revolution. During the terror, there were 17,000 people killed. During the Paris Commune, in which the government crushed the movement, there were up to 40,000 deaths and 50,000 more exiled. And this shows how the implementation of technologies help, unfortunately, to massacre people in their thousands. So, for Hannah Arendt, this inspiration that the people draw from the past drive their main strengths from the kind of power of tradition. And in that sense, Hannah Arendt, which remarks that the crisis of authority was fundamental and the elimination of a figure like God, tradition, was crucial for the current world. This has been hugely debated by different writers, political thinkers, and some people like Eric Fromm in his book The Fear of Freedom explains this dichotomy between how the people wanted to establish a free system, but at the same time, in order to do so, they need to get free from the old order, and in doing so, they can create a state of panic in which they are not able to follow anything new, but rather because there is a vacuum in their life. This also is explained by Nietzsche when he mentions that God is dead as a kind of symptom of the societies that in which he was living for. The idea that because you don't have the figure of the idol anymore, you need to seek freedom by yourself, and this can be terrifying for many people. Sigmund Freud also points to this idea of the demolishing of the idol and how the kind of destruction of the figure like a father can create a state of fear among the people. Albert Camus in his book The Rebel, also echoing Nietzsche's thought, points how this idea of not having a guardian, a kind of divine influence, could create different trends in society. Hannah Arendt precisely points that this is one of the reasons why totalitarian regime rose, because there was no authority anymore to be followed, and this created an empty space which was filled by the worst kind of ideology during the 20th century. And even in the book that I am reading now, The Brothers Karamazov of Dostoevsky, that I surely will do an episode about that one, there is a conversation between Alexei Karamazov and Dmitry Karamazov, the two brothers, in which Dmitry tells his brother how he had a conversation with a person who he called a socialist, he's called Rakitin, and how this Rakitin point to him that there is no God anymore, and this replied to him, but how this can happen, what can we follow now? And the problem is that the other Rakitin mentioned, well, you can follow yourself, you can believe in humanity, humankind have the power in order to solve the problems. But Dmitry Karamazov is not convinced by the argument, and for that reason he asked his brother Alexei Karamazov, which is a priest in the small town in Russia, which I don't remember which one was. But you have still this debate within this novel written in the 19th century, so it helps you to understand that these ideas were influencing at that time the kind of society in which they were living. So, and just to finish here, the idea of authority as a kind of something that has been diminishing for many years, even centuries, has been widely debated. There has been explanations about why this has happened and how this had affected our societies. And I think, just to conclude, that this is a great argument still to have for, but I will be against the idea of Hannah Arendt pointing how the diminution of authority has created a situation which is much worse than in the past, because obviously with the ancient regime people did not have freedom and there were injustice happening there, same as are happening now. But I'm not so sure, as he points, that it is because of the loss of authority that humanity has been kind of neglecting a role that they had in the past. I believe that the loss of authority can be something positive. It is just a matter of how people can use now this freedom in order to establish a better society through the use of common cooperation or an international solidarity.